What's up, HC Nation? Hey, welcome to our first presentation. This one I think you're really going to enjoy, except there's a small setback, and that's the audio. So we are actually going to be sending our historian, Connor, one of our historians, a new microphone. Because after we recorded this, we found out that his microphone is not the best. So we're going to have him use this new microphone that future ones like this will be better. And I'm just telling you, this is going to be something really cool. We're actually starting up new video presentations and also new podcast. So check that out. Now, it's only be once a week, but we have our other historian, Jeff, working on the podcast, Connor, but now he doesn't actually know he's being recorded. So this is really going to be fun. He gets so passionate about certain things. And you're going to see exactly what he gets passionate in this video. It has to do with the Crusades and the controversy behind it. So if you've ever wondered why the Crusades is such a controversial, I don't want to say war because of this discussion. I'm going to say war right now until we come up with a better term to explain it. But until then, here we are with Connor, our historian, and he's going to talk to you about the Crusades. Thanks so much. We'll catch you soon. Why they call it a holy war?
Oh yeah. So why they call it a holy war is because, they're taking things out of context. True, there is enormous religious, religion plays a fundamental role, obviously, because they're going on a holy pilgrimage. It is a pilgrimage, which is a holy act. But and the reason why they call it, a holy war is because there was fighting and whatnot. But generally, holy wars, as we attribute them today, they're just going in to butcher people of another faith because they don't agree with them. You don't see that in the First Crusade and we shouldn't really call it the First Crusade. But anyway, in the First Crusade, they engage with the Romans, who are Orthodox, right? 28, 30 years before you have the Great Schism. Right? Even the Western Church would have considered them heretics, wouldn't they? Not really, because Robison is talking with Alexius, like, hey, I'll fight with you, sure, bro. And then, they send an embassy to the Fatimids of Egypt, who are Shiite Muslims who rule in Egypt, right? But they're Muslims, right? You would think, okay, if this is a true holy war, we're going to go in and butcher them. No, they open up an alliance with them, try to. And then another source of the right before they go to Jerusalem, they stop at Tripoli, which is ruled by Muslims, and they hang out there for a couple of months, and they make an alliance with the Tripolitans. So you have to understand that when they're marching, especially through, for example, Syria, that's a cosmopolitan melting pot. You have Syrian Muslims, Syrian Christians, Armenian Catholics, Armenian Orthodox. You have so they can't just go around and butcher everybody because they're not going to get food. Then their logistics will get smashed because everybody's attacking them. So these people are not the mindless, bloodthirsty, fanatical, 11th century Christians that everybody makes them out to be. And another reason why, it's because of theory, right? Marxist theory in particular. Marxist theory of history has it that history is based on oppression, right? Oppression of the sexes, oppression of the classes, oppression by religion, right? And so Marxism, this lens viewing of history, looks at the First Crusade and it's like, oh, this was European imperialism 700 years before, scrambled for Africa. But it wasn't. This is baloney. Hey. I can go on and on, but that's basically the gist of it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
That is really cool. So
also, there aren't any, if you look at the Muslim sources, right, you basically have Ibn al-Athir, you have the Damascus Chronicle. The problem with all of these is that they're written 60, 70 years after the First Crusade happened. So what's happening in the 1170s and the 1180s? Well, Saladin is trying to reconquer Jerusalem, right? And, his war, he's really categorizing his war as a religious war, right? So they're judging the last decade of the 11th century based on late 12th century standards. Mm-hmm. So you can't really, that's like someone now looking at World War II and saying, this is how the reality of World War II was, basing it off of a 2019 mindset. Would you really? That's not in any way correct or accurate. You're not contextualizing it. You're not taking into account the massive change in, the religious ideology, the geopolitical framework, the kingdom. So we have to be careful. But the Frankish sources, like the Gesta Francorum, right? Jerusalem falls in 1099. Well, the Gesta Francorum manuscript, the earliest we have, is from 1100. So he was writing this down within months of the campaign ending, which is why he's, so valuable. He still remembers it all.
Mm-hmm.
And there are areas during the campaign, like the Great Sortie from Antioch at the end of June, where they're literally starving and they're surrounded by a far greater force of Muslims, and yet they attack with a handful of men, and most of them are on foot, by the way, so that takes away your tactical flexibility. And they trash this greater army of Muslims against them, and it's a 1 in a million victory. So naturally, they're going to chalk it up to divine favor. So, but again, there are all these various complex pieces that people don't know or disregard, and that's problematic. Like the Civil War. Was the Civil War about slavery? Absolutely. But when you look at the South, like I read their Constitution, and because I'm a geek, I read all 11 ordinances of secession, and they will say, yes, slavery, big thing, absolutely. But I mean, their fervor for states' rights, for decentralization of government, I mean, they usually harken back to the Declaration of Independence. They say, Constitution was a contract, the North has broken that contract, we are within our rights to get out of it, so that's what we're doing, with a lot more. But, people will read that. And I have the sources, so.
So, okay, one last thing. You were talking about the pilgrimage, that it was a holy pilgrimage.
Yeah.
So can you explain that just a little bit more?
Absolutely. So a pilgrimage, in the Christian sense, it's a spiritual journey, right? It's an actual journey. You go somewhere, but it's grounded, fundamentally religious, and you go to a place with massive religious significance. So go to a place where a saint was martyred, for example, or where, in Ireland, at a place called Knock, tradition has it that the Virgin Mary appeared there, so people take pilgrimage there. With the Holy Land, with Jerusalem, I mean, this is where Jesus, this is where he was crucified, right? This is where the Church of the Holy Sepulchre was. And then all around there, the whole area around Jerusalem, Galilee, this is where calm the waters of the Dead Sea, the Sea of Galilee, and this is where you turn water to wine, and it's all over the place there. And then that, of course, is where Paul walked around. Alright. Anyway, this is where Paul walked around, and this is where St. Peter was treading, and for Christians, that's all over the place. So they go there to worship there, to Jerusalem. That's where the Redeemer died. That's, and then Bethlehem is right next door.
Yeah.
So it's like, but the way to get there was treacherous because there were so many polities there. And understand, the Muslim community was divided, right? It's over a century since the Abbasid Caliphate loses control of things, and in the decades immediately before the launching of the First Crusade, you have the Seljuks coming in, and the Seljuks are fanatical Sunni Muslims, who are going in and just taking names and kicking the crap out of everybody, including the Romans. And because the Romans, they'll suffer through a civil war and further military defeats. So Alexius is like, I need men to help me. So he sends it over to Urban, and Urban's like, okay, I'll help you. But when Urban preaches at Claremont, I mean, you have such excitement about the Council of Claremont, like Peter the Hermit. We don't know what he said, but he was such a good talker that he got 1,000, tens of thousands of peasants to follow him, not just peasants, but knights. And, Urban's message was misconstrued by these people because Urban is directing his language towards, the people who can go and fight, particularly the lords, because they got the money, they got the knights, they can raise forces, professional soldiers. The People's Crusade is, you have soldiers, but you have a lot of peasants who've never held a sword before. So when people talk about the First Crusade and it being, this mob of people going forward, they're not entirely wrong, but it's unlikely that Urban's original intent was to send these unskilled European peasants to go take on the Seljuk army, which is why they get destroyed. And it takes a lot longer for the armies to gather because, you have to equip them and you have to, provide provisioning for horses and things like that. So it takes them a while.
Now, what you were just explaining sounds like Urban was setting up a holy war, but it wasn't.
Yeah, it wasn't. So Urban is not. So a holy war is usually a war of aggression, right? He painted. Well, we don't know what he said. Okay, so there are 6 separate sources for his speech, right? And all of them are reconstructions. You have Baldric of Doul, you have Guibert of Moudon, you have Folker of Chartres, you have Gesta author, but all of them are, provide a different interpretation, and each of them are adding something new.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Folker, who we know was in the crowd, so he's writing years later, but, it's unlikely you're going to forget. Just like if someone was in the crowd when Dr. King was giving, I have a dream speech, you're not necessarily going to forget that easily. So he puts it in Urban's mouth, but I find it's probably accurate that he said. So the Latin is Sanctae Peregrinationis, which means holy pilgrimage, right? And then you get the emphasis on Jerusalem. But the Gesta author also says the Holy Sepulchre, which is in Jerusalem. So a pilgrimage is not a war. Okay, it is a journey. And true, it's armed, but in order to get where you need to go, and if you have to cut your way through hostile crowds, you're going to go there. But it's not a war, right? There's definite distinctions. The pilgrims are not going to conquer. Okay, why they end up conquering is military necessity. So they take Antioch because it's on the road to Jerusalem, and they have to secure it because if they leave a hostile city in their back, oh my God, their rear is going to be severed, their supply lines are going to be cut, and the enemy can, get them in a pincer and annihilate them. So the way I like to think about it is, when the Muslim armies invaded Roman Palestine in the 7th century, that also is, imperialism by accident. Mm-hmm. Because Abu Bakr he's not saying, let's go out and conquer and convert these people. No. I mean, he's dealing with the civil war, and in order to keep the Ummah, right, the community of Muslims together, direct them against a shared enemy, right? Instead of killing each other, go kill them, right? Then we're all united and happy brotherhood, So.
But there was actually Muslim groups that they actually worked together with, setting up trees.
Oh yeah. And the year before the Crusaders get to Jerusalem comes under siege in July 1098. So it was a Seljuk city. The Fatimids march up and seize it. And then a year later, the Crusaders take it from the Fatimids.
So it's going from one ownership to the next.
Yeah. I mean, so it's... Religion plays its role, but too many people don't look at the political atmosphere of the time. And Al-Qalanisi, who writes the Damascus Chronicle, he's like, hell yeah, more stinky barbecue. The Fatimids kick the nose in, but the next year when the Crusaders come in, he's like, oh, this is so egregious. How dare they? They're monsters, blah, blah, blah. And yet, doesn't have a problem Muslim on Muslim, but
So you've worked with the Latin and the original texts on the Crusader side. Have you ever worked with any of the texts on the Muslim side?
Yeah, I can't. I mean, I've done translations because Pickler had all of those, but I don't know Arabic.
Yeah.
I could translate that if I wanted to, but thankfully better people than me have translated them. So I did go through the Damascus Chronicle, which is pretty quick because it's basically this happened, that happened, the other thing. And then Ibn al-Athir, who's writing a year later, the problem with him is he is so biased towards the Muslims. He says, it's really funny, in the first page and a half, he calls the Franks barbarians who like to fart and fornicate with their mothers. So is that really an unbiased source? I ask you, but the best of Frank Kornmacher, he is so in the moment, he's biased towards both of them, who is he's serving under, but relatively speaking, I mean, he's pretty damn accurate. And clearly he doesn't favor the Muslims, which is natural considering he's fought against them as an 11th century Christian. But yeah, he's pretty solid. And his Latin was the most acceptable because I just went on the Latin library and was like, oh, all right, let's do some translation. So,
I love that you can do translations. That's awesome.
They take forever though, so I think I'm just gonna stick to translations for now.
Well, thank you for doing that. That really helps. And the explanation, that was awesome. I like that.
Go on forever.
Wait, well, I have one last. I think I said this before, but I'm going to say it one more time. One last question. So you mentioned a treaty with Egypt.
Yeah. Well,
but Egypt's south of Jerusalem.
There wasn't necessarily a treaty. They sent an embassy,
and
we don't know if they shook hands because there's no treaty, right? But yes, Egypt is south of Jerusalem. So what the Fatimids did is, while the Seljuks, under whose control Jerusalem falls, they basically gathered all their forces from Aleppo and Mosul and Damascus, and they're all surrounding the Crusaders in Antioch. And this leaves Jerusalem, part of the south, relatively speaking, undefended. So this enables a large Fatimid army to go up and surround the city in July and take it. And remember, at the end of June, when the Crusaders stormed out of Antioch, they destroyed and dispersed Kerboga's large army. So even if they could have gotten south, the Seljuks were far too disorganized and demoralized to go south and defend Jerusalem. So Fatimids just went up and they're like, oh, this is our thing.
And so that was the ownership before the Crusaders actually got there.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And a very good book, I recommend it to everybody should read it. It's Victory in the East by John France. He's great because he is one of the first authors to look at the Crusade, the First Crusade, as a military campaign.
Mm-hmm.
You would expect people would automatically look at it like that because that's what it is, primarily. Yeah, too many people don't understand the military aspect of it, the strategy and the operations, and they can't possibly fathom, okay, they're just taking these cities because they're full of Muslims and they're going to murder them because they're Christians. No, military necessity. You don't leave hostiles in your rear. You guard your line of communications, yada, yada, yada. And in fact, at the end of the First Crusade, the majority of the Crusaders, they go home. Right?
That was my next question.
Very tiny garrison behind. And so I read Walter the Chancellor's Chronicle. Walter the Chancellor was the Chancellor of the Principality of Antioch in the decade following the First Crusade. And the biggest battle they fight is at a place called Ager Sanguinius, which from Latin translates to the field of blood.
Yeah.
And so this was dealing with a massive Muslim invasion, and Walter, he says, okay, we fought 400,000 Muslims. That's baloney. But he gives his own figures at 3,000 foot soldiers and 700 knights. All right, and that is probably the entire muster of Antioch in 1119. That is minuscule to defend northern Syria with that little amount, but it's probably accurate.
Did they actually do it? I mean, or was it taken?
No, Ager Sanguinius, the Antiochene army, was annihilated.
Okay, yeah. So I was gonna say.
But I mean, it gives you a fantastic reality into the number situation. Because everybody goes, no, why would you stay here? Glory's back in Europe, right? Wine and women and song, and I don't have to go to church ever again because I survived the Crusades, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, tell your story to everyone, yeah.
Hell yeah. But for the people who, stayed behind, they had a time of it.
Yeah.
And no one really looks at the campaigns in the 2 decades after the Crusades, because almost immediately the Muslims all of a sudden are like, invade, 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 because they want to drive them into the sea. We come close on occasion, but in the end, it doesn't happen.
We're going to have to talk about the other Crusades later on.
Yeah. I love the First Crusade, though. It's the greatest military upset ever.
Hmm. Okay, I'm gonna let you tell me that later. Thank you so much for going through that. Again,
Sure.
This is one reason why I always, as soon as I got to know you, I had to have you as part of the team.
Yeah.
Because of your passion.
Thank you.
So others they're great, but they don't have a passion for, like a very outspoken passion like you do. So.
Oh, yeah.
I very much appreciate that.
Suffer ignoramuses when it comes to history. There's too many of them.
Cool. I'm going to ask you about another controversy at some point, like in the next meetings that we have. So I'd love to hear some of the other controversies that you come up with that there's a lot of ignoramuses of, such as, like we said, Christopher Columbus and Civil War and things like that. So next time. Boom! I hope you enjoyed that big old bomb of information. Conor is just so full of it because he loves going to the sources. And as you just saw, he goes through not just one source, but he has like many sources. He goes to the Latin library. He translates things for you. He just gets all into this. And this is why he's one of our historians. And it's so great to be associated with someone like this because his brain, there is so much knowledge up here and we're helping bring it out. And I also talked to him after this video was made, and he was talking about all the small parts that he's learning. Like he didn't know about some of the other things outside of war strategy that he is so enjoying that he never really enjoyed as much before because he didn't go into it. He went into the war history. That's where his background is. He had so much fun doing this. And again, he didn't know he was being recorded. So every week I'm going to be meeting with him and videotaping his rants. Now, I don't know how it would change, but at some point I'm going to have to tell him that he's on video. And then maybe I'll record that, me telling him that. And I can almost guarantee he won't mind a bit because we've actually talked about this in the past. But I want him to be able to show that passion without having it manufactured whatsoever. So he just goes off. And it was just so much fun to talk with him. And as you saw, I didn't do much talking. He just kept going. And that's the best kind of rant. Because again, there's so much knowledge in his mind, and it comes purely from the source. So one of these times, we're going to be talking about the Civil War and the controversies there. We're going to talk about Christopher Columbus, the controversies there. Aztecs, I mean, everything that he has in his head, we're going to try to bring out to you. Also, the new website that we're going to be, should be coming out by the end of October. Mid-October is when the functional website comes out. End of October is when it's fully functioning 100%. That's at least the programmers have told us. So we want to get you in and have you have fun with this and be part of this the whole way through. And so his rants are going to be all over this new website. And Also, one thing that has nothing to do with this, has nothing to do with Conor, we have a contest coming up. Actually, we're probably gonna have 4 a year for a cash prize, and it's searching out certain information. It's gonna be a treasure hunt. So stay tuned for that. You're gonna want to be part of this. Thanks so much for joining us on this first presentation. Can't wait to send you the next one. We might be doing Nikola Tesla. We'll get there as soon as we can. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you. If you have any comments or questions, add them to the comments below. Otherwise, we'll see you tomorrow, actually. Take care. Bye.